About our next reader, Marilyn Robinson said, "There is great originality and great freedom in Thisbe Nissen's approach, a kind of classicism in her lucid and compassionate interest in the ways of this present world." Thisbe is the author of 4 books of fiction, Out of the Girls' Room and Into the Night, The Good People of New York, Osprey Island, and Our Lady of the Prairie. And she co-wrote with Aaron Ergenbright, The Ex-Boyfriend Cookbook. She attended the Iowa Writers Workshop and has taught in enough places that I won't name them all. She's currently at Western Michigan University and is one of 2 of Cornell M.F.A.'s guest artists. Please welcome Thisbe Nissen.
Thank you so much, Glenn, and thank you, Rachel, for that. I almost want to offer not to read so we could all hear the rest of Rachel's story. And I too am going to read a partial story. So, you know, you'll have 2 unfinished things, although I think Rachel's has a lot more plot going for it than mine ever did. So, but we can talk about those things later. Okay, am I good? I haven't done one of these quite like this before, so let me make sure I'm doing it all right. And if I'm doing something wrong, somebody let me know and I don't know, stick it in the chat or something like that. I want to figure out how to not look at my own face so large while I read. Okay, I think I'm ready. Thank you again to everyone. I'm so happy to be a part of this. I have a story collection coming out this spring from Wayne State University Press. Oh, and I'm going to do it right now before I forget. I'm going to put in the chat. I have a whole thing of ordering information with a special there it is. This is sorry, it's from the folks at Wayne State. So but the book comes out, it's called How Other People Make Love, and it comes out in April, and there's a code here to get a 30% off on pre-orders. And the first paragraph in this thing in the chat is about how you may be very disappointed if you go there and you'll see that they're having a 45% off sale on everything else, but it's not on forthcoming books. So you only get the 30% off. I'm seeing popped up that Andrea saying, love that title, and I thank you, Andrea. And that's a good segue for me because the title of the collection, How Other People Make Love, used to be the title of the story that I'm about to read. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being the title of the story, or stopped being the right title for the story. And so the story is now called Alone and Clapping, but I saved the title and used it for the whole collection because it seemed really appropriate for the collection as a whole. Most of the stories center around weddings, which is probably because I spent most of my 30s going to people's weddings and taking notes on, you know, programs and stuff about great and wonderful things that were happening around me, and then writing stories about them all. So I think without further ado, this is hard with no feedback. I feel like I'm in a void. It's weird. All right, I'm getting over it. So I'll read the beginning of Alone and Clapping. About her presence at the Clish wedding, Jeannie Spar feels somewhat duplicitous. Shelley is an old friend, yes. And there is something beyond their shared past that binds the Aerobox girls, even nearly 20 years after the rise of the Reebok, the Battle of the Bulge, and the ascendancy and nosedive plummet of Dr. Robbie Wax and the Power Out trademark. They clung and clustered through the trial, but once Wax went to prison, the displaced girls resorted variously to waitressing, temping, personal training, lifeguarding, escorting, elder care, stripping, and in Jeannie's case, returning to college, pre-med, with an infant Bjorn to her breast. A round-robin letter circulated for years, a letter Jeannie has occasionally hauled out to prove her involvement, her centrality, really, in what amounted to a landmark case in the statutory rape prosecution of an aerobics guru / cult leader. She was not the plaintiff, though she testified on the girl's behalf. Jeannie herself had been a perfectly legal, almost 20-year-old by the time she'd lost enough weight to render herself desirable to Dr. Robbie. He had them all in the pill, of course, but Jeannie had been one of the statistical outliers, or if she were completely honest regarding her pill-taking diligence, as she well knows few women ever are. She has to admit she'd been a typical woman who took her birth control with typical regularity, resulting in a typical efficacy rate of 91%. Jeannie Spar, teenage 1980s aerobics video weight loss minor celebrity, had not been, as Dr. Robbie claimed and took credit for in the infomercials, perfect. Jeannie is now, and has only ever been, typical. If she'd gone through with the abortion, Dr. Robbie would have gladly kept her around. For typical as she may have been, she was also Jeannie, an Aerobox success story, the most successful video in the Power Out series, as Jeannie is sometimes disturbingly compelled to remind herself. But that was ancient history. Before Tyler's birth, before the trial, before Power Out VHS tapes were in demand only as kitsch, gifted as gags at white elephant parties across middle America. Jeannie's video opens on a photo, a snapshot still of her arrival at college, freshman year, then cuts to video a year later to find its heroine, age 19, lumbering out of the dining hall, licking a soft serve rainbow sprinkled cone, a good 40 pounds flabbier, cheeks like a blowfish, thighs saddled like a pack llama. Thus begins the chronicle of a ferocious year of workouts. Our heroine shape-shifting through kicks and punches into a svelte little aeroboxer. Trademark. Moving up to a spot at the front of the class, behind Wax, competing for the favor of the master, and finding herself, by video's end, sporting a coveted headset mic, counting aloud and whooping and grunting in endorphin-addled ecstasy. Understandably neglected is any on-screen depiction of Jeannie's concurrent assumption of a spot in Wax's bed, which turned out to be more temporary even than the weight loss, hardly exclusive, and far less enviable than her place on the Aerobox arena floor. During the trial, Jeannie liked joking about a sequel. Jeannie 2, knocked up and powered out. But nobody else ever thought it that funny. Recently, though, there seems to be interest in a Power Out Where the Girls Are Now, a proposed follow-up that would find Jeannie morphed yet again into Eugenia Spar, MD, former secretary of the PTA in the Iowa town where she makes her home. Tyler, Jeannie's Aerobox love child, is a gay 17-year-old student at the School of American Ballet in New York City, where he lives with 4 teenage ballerinas in an unclean apartment in Hell's Kitchen. In a few years, if he remains, knock on wood, uninjured, he'll be soloing with the City Ballet. Tyler is the geode core of Jeannie's life and the source of her gravest anxieties. No number of safe sex videos and condom conversations will ever truly put her mind at ease with regard to her son's safety. Also, she misses him. Her Iowa nest is not big, but it's proverbially and literally empty without him. And Jeannie is proverbially, literally, existentially, and physically lonely. There's been virtual talk on the updated tech-savvy round robin, now at www.aeroboxgirls.com and wisely password protected, about finding a man for Jeannie, and Shelley has promised her a wedding reception seat at a table with an apparently eligible one named Bob Boole. By way of description, Shelley has offered that Bob is 45, single, a good man who likes children and is smart. This is all it took to get Jeannie on the plane, about which she feels slightly embarrassed of and frightened for herself. Jeannie is 37 years old. Sometimes she thinks she would like to have another child. The Clish ceremony is held at a business plaza church off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Jeannie pans the sanctuary for a man who might reasonably be Bob Boole. She has no idea what he actually looks like. Debbie Beatty, the only other Aerobox alumna present, is in the wedding party, so Jeannie sits by herself to watch all 14 bridesmaids float by, each delightfully fatter than the last, as though they've been arranged according to dress size. Debbie's near the middle of the lineup, no heftier or svelter than Jeannie these days. Shelley looks good, Jeannie thinks, if somewhat orange from tanning, and about as butch as ever, despite the wedding gown and the groom. Biceps like Shelley's wither all forays into femininity. Jeannie will tell Tyler on the phone later tonight or tomorrow. Real life, Jeannie feels at this point in her own, is infinitely inferior to the version of it she relays in amusing anecdotes to her son. Now she's Shelley Clish, she'll tell Tyler. With a name like that, the woman will never cease to be an object of every lesbian's desire, husband be damned. The Clishes don't force their guests through a receiving line. They simply disappear after the ceremony, as though they've been whisked off to a janitor's supply closet to hastily consummate the marriage, while their guests move on black tie mass to an adjacent office park, where a businessman's Ramada Convention Center will be the site of the reception. But upon arrival, it is discovered that the hall is not yet done playing host to a bar mitzvah bash. Soft-skinned boys in suit pants stealing each other's yarmulkes, and thin-wristed girls hose bagging at their knees, checking one another's bracelets for trapped food. And the Clish party can't get into the room for another hour, so the wedding guests make their way to the Ramada Lobby Sports Bar. Amstel Light is on special, and they conduct their predictable conversations. Bride's side? Grooms? Beneath life-size Steelers and Pirates posters, while 14 games play simultaneously on 14 mounted consoles around the bar. All interaction is punctuated with upward glances at every flash of a screen. We look like a bunch of paranoiacs waiting for Big Brother, Jeannie will tell Tyler, or sinners checking for God. This, she feels, is far funnier than the fact of a bunch of adult strangers relying on televised team sports to quell their crowd-born anxiety. Jeannie smiles at every passing man between 30 and 65 just to be safe. And though her smiles don't go entirely unacknowledged, there's no Bob Boole coming back at her with a Jeannie spar? The double takes come mostly from women who, consciously or not, must recognize Jeannie as the girl from the videos. Jeannie feels fundamentally incapable of deciding whether it thrills or depresses her. Anyway, if Bob Boole's seen the videos, he's not making that connection across 20 years and 50-odd pounds. By the time a side wing of the banquet hall opens for cocktail hour, the guests are already hammered, tearing at the hors d'oeuvres table like stoned adolescents. There's cruise ship opulence to the spread, tremendous bowls of fern and moss-colored dips, surfboard-sized giant salmon catching waves of ornamental kale, ice skating rinks of wraps and rolls, mosaics of crackers cobbled like great Italian piazzas, a botanical garden of crudité. The help in white Iron Chef costumes wield their steak knives and sauce ladles like majorettes, and Jeannie's instinct is to duck and cover every time a blade catches the chandelier light. She would not mind just now spending some time underneath a banquet table. She's drunk far too much on an empty stomach and piles her cocktail plate high with booze-absorbent tidbits. Sadly, for all the flash, everything tastes like everything else, bland and chewy and oiled. When the ballroom doors fly open at last, Jeannie is not only still drunk, but also stuffed so full she can't bend at the waist. Upon finding her table, she's forced to perch on the lip of her chair in a sort of deep knee bend to ensure the integrity of her straining dress seams. Table mates arrive, introducing themselves as they claim their assigned seats. There's a pair of lesbians, Corey and Angie, one in a tux, the other exquisitely beautiful, fine-boned, shimmering, her head shaved clean to the scalp. And there's Jilly and her developmentally disabled older brother, Craig, both siblings chinless with pronounced underbites. Craig's suit is of a tan, stain-resistant material, though stained nonetheless, and woefully inadequate of length in both leg and arm. Jilly's got an aqua blue blazer over a navy blue elastic waist dress and earrings to match her plastic beaded bracelet. Everyone stands to shake hands across the table, piled with more china and glassware than an Oneida showroom. But then, once they're seated, they can no longer see each other over the mounded centerpiece, donut-sized hot pink roses and enough baby's breath to choke a baby. Last to arrive at table number 17 are the photographer and his assistant, who make a brief appearance, not to take their seats, but to unload a small arsenal of black ripstop camera bags, tripods, screens, umbrellas, and an antique glass plate field camera that might have been fresh from the battle at Antietam. All this gear serves to block the table's view of the rest of the room, and vice versa, which lends to the sense that the guests at number 17 are more like stagehands in the wings of this reception. Jeannie finally picks out Bob Boole from across the room, this recognition accompanied by a twisting abdominal cramp, like the squirm of an intestinal parasite. As Bob Boole comes toward her, the wrench in Jeannie's gut gives way to nauseated exhaustion. There's a wave of heat, and Jeannie has to fight every impulse in her being not to simply lay her head down on her place setting and die. A tulle and satin goodie bag of mints and mini champagne bottles would serve as a headstone. Her epitaph: do not open in close confines, may cause serious injury. When Bob Boole arrives at table number 17, sweaty and winded from his cross ballroom journey, he smiles down, ducking humbly, almost bowing, and says, his voice warm and full and disarmingly kind, "You must be Jeannie." And Jeannie thinks, God, can't I please be someone else? She is no actress, does not mask disappointment well, so perhaps it's a purely autonomic response that makes her approximate a smile, stick out her hand and say, Bob, in a way that makes it sound like she's been waiting her whole life for Bob. And here he is, Bob. And her relief at finally meeting Bob is beyond her wildest fairy princess imagination. Only this isn't the Bob Jeannie's been waiting for. Her Bob is taller, she's sure. Her Bob may be balding, but he's balding like Bruce Willis, not like someone's Aunt Myrtle. Her Bob is nothing like this Bob. Where is Jeannie's Bob? The Bob who's like her, but male. The slightly sad, once handsome, now aging, but still sort of handsome Bob, in whose faded beauty her own might begin to glow anew. Who is this man, Jeannie wants to know, and what has he done with her Bob? Well, Bob Boole may be an imposter, but he's not an idiot. The man is well aware that an existential vacuum has just slurped up every trace of anticipation from this meeting. Shroop, gone. In its place is a corporeal weight, landed with the thud of indisputable news. You're pregnant, you're bleeding, you're caught, guilty, dead. Nonetheless, what's a Bob to do but take his seat beside Jeannie and plow on down the dead end of this night? As he's settling in, though, he stops himself, suddenly remembering his manners, and says, "Can I get you a drink?" He's desperate to flee, it's clear, but Jeannie's no less desperate, if just for a few moments alone to regain her bearings in the face of this disappointment. "Great," she chirps, and off he spins toward the bar, speedy as a busboy newly promoted to waitstaff, green as celery and eager to make waiter of the year. He hasn't even asked what she's drinking. Bob's flight is accompanied by a voice booming from everywhere. It's God in Dolby. It's DJ Dan. Gangly, double-jointed, on a mic with too much bass, perched on a platform above the dance floor. He's the MC, the party master meister, and he's starting things off with pizzazz. He's motherfucking Bob Barker calling, "Come on down," only it's "Ladies and gentlemen," and the disco beats are thumping. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the wedding party." And everyone in the ballroom is clapping and swaying, singing right along to "Celebrate good times. Come on, as one peachy pink bridesmaid after another gallops in for the double doors marked exit. Trailing behind her are rental tuxedoed groomsmen. Below DJ Dan's platform, they gather like feudal subjects, dancing in place while he contextualizes each entering pair, painfully mispronouncing every name out of his mouth. Now, why don't you all give it up for Miss Sharon Ganny Shennythan, who's known the bride since junior high, and Mr. Jim Nakami, who works in the cubicle next to the groom. And they dance on down the parquet, filing into wait and clap and cheer for the next couple down the aisle, like the setup for some elaborate square dance that just keeps on setting up. DJ booming, celebrate, giving way to We Are Family. Shelley's husband's mom and dad blundering down the aisle like Dorothy and the straw-legged scarecrow. DJ Dan says their last name so it rhymes with leash. Mom and dad cliche, a cliche that's lost its accented E. When it's finally over, first dance segueing into group dancing, conversation rising in the ballroom once again like ants from a rain puddle. Jeannie's sufficiently distracted from the letdown of Bob that she thinks she can cope like the adult she's supposed to be. He returns to the table with a drink so absurd it might as well come with a garland of orchids and the kiss of a grass-skirted native girl. I asked for something festive, he explains. The drink is blue, the swizzle stick plumed. Bob's drinking scotch, and from the smell and weave of him, Jeannie's guessing he put away a few while the bartender alchemized her sapphire spritzer. Sizzler. She sips and toasts simultaneously by way of thank you. It's spiked Kool-Aid. It could be worse. Bob's finally about to actually sit when he freezes mid-knee bend at the sight of something across the table. Jeannie's eyes follow his. Jilly Nader? He gawks, incredulous. Jilly snaps to attention. Bob Boole? And what do you know? Bob Boole babysat for Jilly and Craigie Nader so many years ago back in Tip City, Ohio. And my God, what are the chances? Bob crosses behind Jeannie, laying an apologetic and conciliatory palm on her shoulder as he moves to kneel by Craig's chair and greet that blank-eyed face. He steals the photographer's assistant's empty chair, pulls it over so he and Jilly can catch up. Oh, they'd loved him, Jilly tells Bob. Does he remember how he'd also worked part-time at the Frosty Barn and he'd give them free jimmies on their extra swirly cones of vanilla and chocolate twist? Jeannie drains her blue Vudo in 3 sips and heads for the bar without a word to anyone. Bob and Jilly will be married within a year. She's willing to put money on it. And I'm going to stop there. And maybe I'm not sure how we're working this, but maybe bring Rachel back and we can chat and answer questions and do whatever we do.